Good evening and welcome to our February 5th meeting. Call to order, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the February 5th, 2024 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Now if you'll please rise for the singing of our national anthem. I think we need a little bit more volume on that one. And I appreciate Councillor Jaworski. I heard you in the corner backing me up there because God knows I have no voice. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, approval of the agenda. Sorry. Are there any changes or amendments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have several items that have been requested to be pulled from the consent agenda for discussion under items for consideration. Those being item 10C, the 2023 brushing program summary, item 10D, the 2023 traffic collection program summary, and item 10I, the resolution regarding the lifespan of fire apparatus.
All right, thank you. So moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Carried. We'll go into the approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Previous meeting minutes, January 15th, 2024, public meeting minutes, January 15th, 2024. Before we call the vote, were there any changes or amendments to it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. There are no presentations and delegations, so we'll move into action requests. Capacity allocation, water and wastewater, Mr. Sege. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-09 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry acknowledge receipt of the 2024 allocation report, being a report which details available capacity for allocation at Redwood Estates, Lancaster, and Glen Walter water treatment plants and that Lancaster, Green Valley, and Green Valley sewage treatment plants for the year 2024. Mr. Sege.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, as you stated, I am bringing forward this evening the capacity allocation for the year 2024. All of the numbers are based on the past year, 2023, as well as the running average for the wastewater system. Wastewater systems, the 5-year average, as well as the water, the max daily total in the last 5 years. So as you guys have this staff report in front of you already, I'd just like to maybe just touch base on a couple of the numbers. So Glen Walter, on your staff report, you're going to see that I just gave you this year's capacity allocations. I'd like to just go over previous year. So last year for Glen Walter Water, we were at +8. We went up to +14, so we're looking at a net increase of +6. You're going to notice beside that under development and infill, I have zeros, even though we're in a positive. That is there due to the reason we have no wastewater capacity allocation to give. We can't just give one without giving the other. So that's why you're going to see zeros, even though we have a positive on the water side. When we look at Lancaster, we're actually just negative. We're at a -3 compared to last year. We're at 274 for the year compared to 277 last year. Some of the main reasons for that is just we've had infill, and we actually had a record high year last year and this year for water flow to consumption days. That's kind of captured in the annual reports, but just to give you a heads up. Redwood, we're looking at positive 13 this year, coming from a positive 8, and that's mainly just due to the math behind the allocation numbers. The more homes we put online with the same amount of flow that we have, it makes our math better to put more homes online because we're using less flow per home. On the wastewater side, Glen Walter, as always, we're still in the negative. Last year we're -31, this year we're -23, so there is a positive increase on that. We're getting closer to that zero. But of course, as per my staff report says, I am looking at hopefully, still halting all development within Glen Walter on the water and wastewater side. Lancaster, we're looking at a positive 73, and there's multiple factors that play into that. Some of it's dealing with development that we were looking at allocating for that didn't come through. Some of it is just multipliers that have been picked up on different connections, such as old folks' homes, residents, larger residents, a sixplex on Victoria that was added. So all these numbers put together, we're seeing a positive 73 increase, but that's very easily, can be easily taken away. I know we're looking at big numbers here, can easily be taken away just very quickly depending on what kind of establishments we're allowing in Glen Walter. Every time we add a larger business, they require more water, more wastewater. And then Green Valley, no changes on development there. We're looking at 50 this year. We're at 52 last year, just from flows with higher wet weather, more leaks, not more leaks in the system, but just more water hitting the wastewater plant. We're looking at 50 this year with 52 last year, so we're looking at a -2, and we didn't build any homes. So that's just giving you a little bit more background for my numbers this year. And as stated, Lancaster, Green Valley, and Redwood are all in the positive and can still support growth, while Glen Walter is at a standstill.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from around council? All right, all those in favor of the motion as previously read, carried. Moving to action request 20, I'll just read it here. Moved by Councillor Bougee, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-10 be received and that the council receive the 2023 reports for the Glen Walter, Lancaster, and Redwood Estates water treatment plants and the Glen Walter, Lancaster, and Green Valley sewage treatment plants and South Glengarry stormwater system for information purposes. Mr. Seguin.
So thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And this year on the staff reports that I'm bringing, not staff report, on this staff report I'm bringing you for the annual reports, you're going to see there's 8 reports in total this year compared to normal years that are only 6. In the last 2 years, we've been working on a consolidated linear infrastructure program where we're taking all of our, the government or the ministry in one is taking all of our old ECAs and putting them into one single ECA. Which is part of the process of allowing faster and quicker development. One ECA means we're not reviewing 10 ECAs for an amendment. We're looking at one ECA for all of Glen Walter, Green Valley, and Lancaster. It's all under one number now instead of having 3 here, 10 there. Every year had a different date stamped on them because every time we do a subdivision, we're stamping another year on it for that ECA. We're all one ECA now. So that's part of this report. It's just not only have they included they've added new requirements for us to bring forward. It's mainly for the ministry, but I figured it was a good to bring to council for council's viewing. And it fits right in with the water and wastewater reports. You'll actually see that on the wastewater report there might be information missing on one. It's just been moved to another report to meet the new requirements. So for stormwater was added, then that's mainly due to like ponds at new subdivisions. Every new subdivision typically is looking at ponds or some type of stormwater. They will be new ECAs coming to us in the future, all under one ECA, of course, but just new requirements for reporting to the ministry that never existed before. And so I'm bringing it to you this evening, so you guys have a couple weeks to review, 2 weeks to review the annual reports, and if you have any questions on, you know, not the capacity, but like the flows, daily flows, something that, you know, might be, you guys might notice from year after year to bring forward.
All right, thank you. Do you want questions now or afterwards? Like during the 2 weeks? Now would be fine?
So if council does have a question for me this evening on something that might help, I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay, I saw Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank Mr. Seguin for preemptively answering all my questions for the earlier report that I sent him in earlier, so thank you for that. And for this one, it's not like the issue about, my question had been, why do we have the stormwater report now? And so not a question, because you answered it, but I guess I wanted to express that I did not realize that we had all these ECAs for the stormwater system. I just probably would have, I assumed it was just one. So it does sound like this is great, like, sounds like it's quite a bit of work to put it together, but it sounds like it'll be very beneficial moving forward. So thanks for that.
All right, may I ask a question, or Councillor Bougie, sorry?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Seguin, for the reports. My question's in relation to the biosolid sludge summary. So we have some of those solids getting transported to the Lancaster Lagoon. How is that, obviously to lessen the load, I'm assuming, in Glen Walter? And how is that going so far? And you see this being a program that we can do into the future?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what occurs is Glen Walter, we have, it's more of a slurry. It's probably looking at like a 20% solid ratio. The rest is all water. So in order for, we have no way in Glen Walter to, we don't have any special mechanical systems to, it's pretty much like desludge it. So we de-water the sludge. In order to do that, we let the natural environment do it. So when we haul it to Lancaster and we apply it on a large area, the sun is able to evaporate the water, and then we're just left with cake, which is like 100% solids. There's no water left in it after a year or two. So we're using the natural environment to get rid of the moisture out of the sludge, and then we store it there, and down the line, one day it'll have to be hauled away. But it is kind of a storage area in Lancaster.
All right, I'll save most of my questions for after, because some of them are comprehension ones, but I did notice on page 24, and it's the sewage pumping station 1 extended aeration plant, UV, it seemed to be pretty consistent, except for in the month of April, where like every month is, like 87 or 90s, and this 1 month is 71%. Is that a question you can answer now, or we can follow up in 2 weeks' time for that answer? I'm just curious if you got an answer.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think if you you send me that one via email to just take a look at, because I'm not, I'd have to pull up page 24 and review it and make sure that I'm speaking of the same thing. But if you send me a quick email, and then I'll have the answer for you next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. So hearing the motion is read, all those in favor? Carried. Move to 7C. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-11 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry receives the 2023 internal and external audit summaries of the Drinking Water Quality Management System, DWQMS, and acknowledge the document audit findings. Mr. Seguin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, so this is my last staff report of the evening. It's in regards to DWQMS. As top management, it is my responsibility to bring it to the owners and council in order to review. We want to keep you guys in the loop as much as possible, as per our commitment to the public. So this evening, there's no endorsement this year. I know most years I always come with an endorsement in order to endorse the DWQMS because of changes we have made. We have not made significant changes that would require an endorsement. So this evening, I'm just bringing to you both the internal and external audit for your viewing. So that's why both reports are attached.
Thank you. Are there any questions from around the table at this time? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. First of all, Mr. Sagan, congratulations on all the positive comments that are in both documents, both the internal and external audit. And so on the internal audit that was done first, I noticed that there were some follow-ups that were called for. So I just wondered if you could give a status update on those. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Jaworski, Councillor Jaworski, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So all of the nonconformities that we've picked up in the internal audits, some have been outstanding for a while, just only caught on to now because we are always reviewing it to make sure that we're up to date and we're meeting the standard as best as we can because we're always trying to continue and improve. But prior to even doing the external auditor, we did complete all the nonconformities that were noted on the internal audit, and we'll continue to do that to make sure we get our accreditation.
All right, and on the external audit, this would be page 97 of your agenda. It says opportunities for improvement. I hope I'm not saying the same thing as Councillor Jaworski, because I think she's touching on the internal one. Just offhand, it says consider adding suppliers for filter media and emergency water supply, and then consider recording more discussions of status of opportunities and improvements. Is there anything that we need to provide you further from a board side?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, nothing. I'm trying to answer this as best as possible. Nothing is truly needed. It was just some of the items were just opportunities for improvement. Something that, as we have time to look into, we can dig deeper into each one. When it comes to just making more notes about our opportunities for improvement, how we have made those improvements. We tend to make improvements sometimes without always writing a note saying, on this day we made this improvement. A lot of the times they fall into the next endorsement round, where we'll note them and we'll see them. But up front, we might not see the opportunity for improvement. Sometimes we don't always fully agree with the opportunity for improvements in certain areas. Sometimes we have our own decisions on how we work internally, but we always do review each OFI and we respond accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure that we're responsible for it at a personal level, possibly. So just to enhance that, and also for council, I believe it's this Thursday we have some training. If you did sign up, so just a reminder for that. All those in favor of this motion as read, carried. We will now move to 7D, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-12 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to remove the Tyotown retaining wall, and furthermore, the Council commit $250,000 from the 2024 capital budget to undertake the removal project. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I think my staff report has most of the relevant details, but I'll just blast through some of it. So this retaining wall is located on Tyotown Road, just east of Boundary Road. It was constructed in 2006 as part of the reconstruction program for that road. It was put in place because the road at the time was higher elevated, and we needed to cut the road down to meet safety requirements of the time. In a photo, you can see there's a home up on top of the embankment, and at that time, the owner was unwilling or did not want to have their house touched, which makes a lot of sense. So this retaining wall was essentially built to keep the upper slope stable, I guess, and keep the home there. We did last year, what year is it? Sorry, 2 years ago, in 2022, have an inspection done of the wall, and the inspection noted that the wall appears to be structurally failing and action is required by the township to prevent further failure of the wall. The township did explore purchasing the property, however, it was purchased by someone else, and luckily for us, they are interested in working with us to remove the wall, and we'll see what we can do about the house. So I know this is in advance of budget, but senior management is on board with this request. I wouldn't come otherwise, and we are requesting approval and direction from you to keep going with removing this wall in 2024 as quickly and safely as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? We got discussion before. Okay, Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. The 250,000 is at a high end. We're hoping, or we don't have a firm price at this point. We're hoping that it would be under that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Deputy Mayor Lang, we're hoping that it will be less once we get into it, but until we get into it, I won't have a firm number. But I firmly believe on this one that this is the upper limit.
Thank you.
Counselor Jaworski, just thinking, or I don't want to miss you?
Through you, Mayor. No, I just wanted to say that although, it was the 2022 inspection that noted there was an issue with the wall, the fact that we're deciding, that we're probably going to have something dealt with, this year, or it sounds like that is the plan and it will happen, I have no doubt, but this is an example of where the staff came up with a creative solution to deal with something that was going to cost the township a significant amount of money, and it's going to be much cheaper. And in the grand scheme of things, it's actually happening fairly quickly, I'd say. So I think it's a good news story.
Yes, it certainly is. I believe Councillor McDonnell at one point, and I don't want to misquote you, so correct me if I'm wrong, kind of said, like, it's nice to have this solution. Like, it was a poor situation in front of us. This outcome is actually better than we thought, and it eliminates the future maintenance, which is something Councillor McDonnell advocated for. So all those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. We'll move to 7E, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-13 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to undertake an asset rationalization for the municipal road and bridge assets. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This is actually, to me, as a General Manager of Infrastructure Services, the most important report on your agenda tonight. I think I wrote enough things, and hopefully everyone read it. But as costs increase, and as our funding from other sources decreases, as our infrastructure ages, and as the expectations, both internally and externally, seem to be increasing, it's incredibly challenging for us as a rural municipality to do more with less. So this is a request to council to hopefully we're on the same page, but if we're not, then at least myself as staff will know. It's asking that you direct us to look at our roads and bridges from an asset rationalization point of view, which is just focusing on the continued need, not do we fix it, but do we need this to have a sustainable South Glengarry in the future. I recognize that starting on this process will be incredibly uncomfortable, and there'll be a lot of conversations moving forward, and it could just be not a fun process, but I'm hoping that council agrees that it's important and allows and directs us to putter away at it over time. We're not asking for additional funding. Built into the draft budget are small pockets of money so that if we need a little bit of help, we can go and ask for expertise. But we're just hoping that you will direct us to undertake this and that you feel that it's important like we do. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think you're on the right track, Ms. McDonald. I think as we look at 23 and 24% municipal inflation, we look at our costs. I think Councillor Bougie and I were talking ahead. I think we're looking at 23% increases on dust suppressant. Gravel's up 70% over the last 5 years. We've got extreme pressures coming on us, and the increase that's come to doing projects it's astronomical. It's becoming unstable, and it's become unstable and it's becoming unsustainable. So I agree. I think you're on the right track here, but I don't want you to do 2 years worth of work on this and then come back to us and we have to feel like we're in a tight position where we feel like we can't criticize it as much just based on you've put that much work into it. I'd like to see maybe some kind of council involvement, and I don't mean into the weeds like we have done in the past where we've gone in depth, and myself and Deputy Mayor Lang in the last term of council did a lot of work on the road, on a roads needs committee. I don't think we need to go that far into it, but I think some kind of consultation with council. I see you have a piece here at the bottom, ongoing consultation with the public is not anticipated through the process, but I think we're elected as representatives of the community. We're here to make sure you have the tools to do your job properly and that we get the right outcome. And often we bring something, I can't expect you to be in contact with 10,000 or 13,000 people across the municipality. And I don't think you should spend 13,000 hours meeting with individuals from the community. but I think that council should play an important role in this, because if we speak frankly, we're talking about closing bridges, or we're talking about closing road portions, and it's significant. And there is some isolated situations where I could see that being very much required, or feasibility over the years, replacing $2 million bridges for 2 houses. Yeah, there's definitely situations where we should be taking a closer look at how we're maintaining it, but this is also level of service, and I think that's where our oversight comes in. So I don't know if it's worth maybe postponing the resolution and coming back with something where you see a balance for council, whether it's 2 members meeting with you quarterly on this, or on an as-need basis, minimum twice a year, or something along those lines, where we have maybe a bit of input. And I don't want it to be like I don't want it to come across as us saying, no, we don't trust you to do that, or we don't think you have the insight to make these decisions. I think we'll have to, any of these closures, your department will get the phone calls, but we'll get the nasty phone calls at the same time. So we want to be prepared for that and have a say in it, I think, is where I'm coming from on this. So if you're looking at an option that way, is having some involvement, whether it's myself or another member, colleague around the table, and maybe the CAO's involvement at some level too, I think it'd just be beneficial for the public and for yourself to save yourself some what's sure to be some criticism from the public when we tell them we're closing a portion of the road and they'll have to be detoured 2 kilometers a day. So just something to consider, I think.
May I just, before going to Deputy Mayor, would you be open to like a suggestion of like a committee of the whole, perhaps more like a semi-annually, and that way we can have those conversations, so that like it's not just you or Martin or Stephanie, or sorry, Councilor McDonnell, Deputy Mayor Lang, et cetera.
I'd agree to that.
Councillor-
I think it's something we can look at on that basis. Again, I don't want to bog down Ms. McDonald, and I don't want to, hinder this altogether. And I mean, I think just council needs to have some oversight on large decisions like closing roads and bridges. And I have full confidence in you and as an engineer and as doing your job. But at the same time, I think the perfect example, I think it came from Councillor Jaworski today, but Deputy Mayor Lang had said, we might decide that this road is no longer feasible to service, and then all of a sudden we find out, we might know from being in the community that there's a $10 million dairy barn going up on it, or somebody's investing a huge amount of money to do something there, or there's the owner of a property down there might have some big plans. So just, it's that ear to the ground from the councillors that are taking it everywhere we go to, to the opposite side of staffing. So, and looking at the true feasibility.
Ms. McDonald, do you have a comment? Or I thought I saw your hand up. If you don't, then I don't want. Okay, yes.
If you don't mind, through you, Mr. Mayor, those are incredibly valid comments, because you are the representation as council. Sorry, with this resolution, it wasn't that we should go forward and make all the decisions on our own and boom, bam, it's done. However, administration says it would absolutely be a collaborative process. Mayor McDonald is correct. I was envisioning a couple of committee of the whole meetings along the way to talk about either the road portion or the bridge portion, and before whatever comes out of it becomes official, it would need to be approved by council, so that's not something that we can do in absence of you. I would, instead of coming back with a new resolution, this is really just a direction, like, yes, council agrees this is something that we'd like your staff to work on, and not so much that we should go off and be cowboys on our own, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Go ahead, Councillor McDonnell.
Yeah, just, I guess, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a final comment, I guess, from myself anyways, is just, I think you're on the right track. I think we definitely need to do this. We need to look at it. I really appreciate you looking to do it internally with, obviously we'll have to engage some consultants at some point. You can't make those decisions all on your own, but at the same time, doing the legwork, we've got the traffic counts, we've got past OSIM's reports, we've got past road, I'm forgetting the one. Anyways, our road rationalization, we have all these reports that we have to do for the province to keep them happy and make sure we get our funding. Let's use them and the money we've invested in doing traffic counts, and from there, engage a consultant if needed. But I think I don't want you to spend an immense amount of time and put too much work into this and then bring it to us and we have to, well, you didn't think of this, or we don't agree with it, or I think so long as we're an integral part of the process as it moves along over, potentially a 2-year span, that it is taken into, our comments are taken into account, and we're not coming in at the final hour to say no, 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 or we agree and whatnot. So just my 2 cents on it at this point. I am in favor of the idea, though.
And if I just, like, levels of service taxation policy is very much our purview, so I think it can be done in a committee of the whole, but we'll get other people's opinions too. But, yeah, because if you change anything, that's a change of level of service, so, yeah, well noted. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Definitely on the right track. I think we've seen through the bridge, we're going to be talking about the bridge in Butternut Lane, Kinloch Side Road. I mean, we know that something has to give here shortly. So I think you're on the right track. I think Councillor McDowell and I talked quite a bit today. I think what he's trying to say, in a roundabout way, is we want to be part of the journey with you to get to this point, because you're saying unknown completion could be multiple years. There's some things we won't be able to wait multiple years for. We have to decide some things shortly, but we do need to have a comprehensive look at everything and see what we can do. But we just want to be part of the journey on the way. We want to be involved. We want to make sure that it's going the way we want. But you're definitely on the right track.
Councillor Jaworski?
Through you, Mayor McDonald. So first, Ms. McDonald, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I tend to agree with you that this is the most important thing that's on the agenda from infrastructure. And like, we have to do it, it's been said. There's just not, like, if we were to put in the investment into all the infrastructure we have, that the amount that we're supposed to be investing, it's absolutely unsustainable. So something has to give, and it's much better. You can make much better decisions about what has to give if you've put some pre-work as opposed to your backs up against the wall. So I think it's so important that we're starting this ASAP. And, we've kind of already started it with some of the items that are on the agenda today. So no, I think it's really good. Now, yeah, it was my example, Councillor McDonnell, about what happens if, someone out there has big plans for a specific piece of property that, when you look at it on a map, is not much happening. And so I do think it's important to have some sort of framework around it. And I do think that whether it's through us or it's the public that needs to be, I think it's very important for the public to be very aware that we're doing this. And I mean, in my mind, when I was sort of thinking of different scenarios, I mean, how it could be done, as it by quadrant of the township, focusing on the northeast and the southeast, and sort of as we're doing that, and I guess if we're having committees of the whole, that sort of gets the word out there. But I think it's one of these things where you do need information, but you don't want so much input that it bogs down unnecessarily the system, because it can be contentious, and some people, in some cases, it can go sideways easily. So I think it's important to be very clear, but also we need to get information. And on the example of the dairy barn, when I was thinking about the different categories of residents or stakeholders that are important to engage, I think the agricultural community is very important, because they rely so heavily on the roads, but also their equipment uses, I don't have the right words, but it causes more wear and tear on our roads. So I think it's important to make sure that their needs are well taken, their needs and their operations. So I was thinking maybe if this is something that should go to the Ag Committee, if it should be something that they consider at some point during the process and provide some feedback in that respect. Again, being the business, the biggest business, that we have in South Glengarry as well. So, and one thing too, when I was looking at this, and I kind of asked myself, well, how do we compare against the other townships in terms of the number of roads we have and our size? And we have pretty much the most roads, like by kilometer, but we're not the largest. So that kind of lends me to think just naturally that, maybe there is some opportunity to do some rationalization, or maybe be creative, like the wall. That's something that's creative. Maybe there's other things we can do that are creative. There's not just a binary of it's open or it's closed. Maybe there's some different versions in between. So yeah, I think it's great, but I think we should have some sort of framework, and I think there should be some engagement, certainly of council, but also of members of different stakeholder groups as well. So thank you.
Yes, and I have for instance, because I think what Councillor McInerney was saying also, we don't want you to spend too much time going down a road that we don't want you to travel. When Councillor Bougie was on council, they did Craft Bridge, and I think I presented something saying, hey, here's the ramifications if we just close Craft Bridge now. That's a very well-traveled bridge, but I spent probably 8 to 12 hours trying to do all these things, which was something council didn't want. So we want to save you that time too. So I think that's what you're touching on. Any further comments? Oh, please, Councillor McDonnell.
Just one, I guess, a situation or an example from a neighboring municipality was one of our neighboring municipalities had decided to close a bridge on a road they figured wasn't traveled. They didn't really do a traffic count on it because, well, there were no real homes on it. But come to find out, there's 3 farms that have landlocked pieces as soon as you close that bridge. So what are your ramifications then? And then you can get into some ugly, out in the public things where they're parking farm equipment on the bridge so you can't remove the bridge. And well, the decision was made and no consultation was done. And then, when, had myself sitting at that table, I could have told you right away, well, I've driven that bridge 100 times with a custom piece of machinery to go and work in that field, and I know there's no other access to it. Or it's like portions of the peanut line, I can tell you where you have to use it to get to somebody's field because, there's little things like that. And it's not just my input, but it's everybody else's around the table, these little situations where we might catch it, and there's a lot of them where we probably wouldn't, and that's where that public piece might come into play. And that'll come as we narrow down projects that we're seriously looking at. So I think the value is there, definitely from the public, but again, we don't need to spend 13,000 hours meeting one-on-one for an hour with each individual landowner or homeowner across the township. But there is, I like Councillor Jaworski's example of using, the Ag Committee and different committees we have already that represent the public. So, thank you.
Yeah, I saw Deputy Mayor Lang put his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So I just wondered, do we pass it as is? I think everybody around the table agrees we need to do this, and then maybe Ms. McDonald could come back with, a little bit of how he would like to see it work and how we could kind of involve everybody to their satisfaction, Would that sound all right to you?
Yes, it would. Are councillors comfortable passing it as with a future? Is that what you're suggesting, right? As is, or you're not so comfortable? Because
Well, we either got to pass it or we got to turn it down. I don't think, there was so much talk here, I don't think we can rewrite it to include everything that was mentioned here tonight. That would be pretty difficult, but I think everybody's in agreement. We want to undertake it. It's just how to get to the end.
Maybe a information report to come back with Ms. McDonald's outline on how she sees council and the public fitting into that process, or do we defer until that? Give you a month or something to come back with it? I mean, if it's a 2-year process, I'm assuming we're not going to make major headway in the next 2 weeks or month anyways, and you've got a pile on your plate, and as it is with RFPs and projects coming out in budget, but I don't know if that's ideal. We just defer, and then once we can work something out between now and then, or do we just look for an information report in the future? Default to the CAO or Ms. McDonald?
please go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and the CAO and clerk can correct me if I'm way off base in how, I feel that if you pass this as it is and you're telling me it's important, and then I can then prioritize it in my head for getting an information report back to you. If it's not prioritized, then I'll prioritize other things that I know need, it's tough as administration to know what to prioritize when it's not a direction, because sometimes we guess, but if you pass it tonight, then I will make sure to come back in fairly short order with that information report.
Okay, that being said, perhaps if I may just call the vote, all those in favor of the resolution? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. It's important to us. We're better together. That's the big thing. We're better together. That's the community, that's us, that's administration. So this is awarding RFP 7F. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-14 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry award RFP 17-2023 for professional services road needs study to Ainley Group per their submission of $28,505 plus HST, and furthermore that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all relevant documents. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this one's fairly straightforward. We put out our RFP for a road needs study in December so that we would have responses about now and could have them out on the roads during the spring thaw to take a look at how our gravel is performing before we go and grade it up and make it look all fluffy and nice. Because at that point, they'll say we have great roads. It's also why this is on the agenda for award before our budget. It is included in the draft budget. I'd originally put in 40,000. This came in closer to 30. And I'm hoping that it will be awarded, even though there is no budget, since we're in that cycle. There were 6 submissions. There were a few that were incredibly technically strong. In the end, Ainley Group had the highest scoring proposal with a submission of $28,505. So we're recommending awarding to them, and they will be able to get their people on the roads for that spring freeze to thaw cycle, which I believe is incredibly important for this study. Thank you.
Councillor Jaworski.
Through you, Mayor McDonald. Though I think this is very important, Ms. McDonald. I'm glad to see this here. The only thing I wanted to note is, yeah, it absolutely makes sense for them to be looking at the roads in their natural condition when they're in the spring thaw. But I also hope that we have commitment from the Ainley Group to do this like very quickly and like at the time that we need them to do it, because I would hate for this to delay any of the spring work, because as we know, our residents find it very difficult, the ungraded roads. So we wouldn't want to, I would hate to have to tell them that, well, we're waiting for the road to be evaluated before we can grade it. So thanks.
All right, or were you looking, Deputy Mayor Lang? No, good. All those in favor as the motion is read? Carried. Now moving to 7G, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-15 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry award RFP 16-2023 for professional services active transportation and trails plan to Robinson Consultants per their submission of $62,970 plus HST. And furthermore, that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign all relevant documents. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this is to award the Active Transportation and Trails Plan that was approved a year ago. This is how quickly administration moves sometimes. It's a joke at myself. I noticed you all laughed. This one, we had 8 submissions. Some of them were incredibly strong. It was a really tough choice, and it actually, in the end, came down to the price evaluation criteria in the matrix. Robinson Consultants had the high scoring proposal with a fee of $62,970. This is less than the budget that we had, which was $80,000. We'd kind of thought in our head $70,000 for the consultants and $5,000 to do any extra traffic count processing, or if we needed to get like a fancy trails device, we could put that out there since this is a AT&T plan. Councillor Jaworski had asked in advance if I could highlight the cost savings that we may have. I believe there will be cost savings, but that depends if administration scoped the job right. So if we scoped it in error, we may need up to our $75,000, or if we want to have an extra public consultation at the end, if public consultation goes kind of awry in some way, shape, or form. But the expectation is that it'll be, that there will be savings to the township on our contribution to the project. How much? Hopefully everything that you see here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No further questions. All those in favor? Carried. Now we're moving into 7H. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-16 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry, and we'll have some options available, so I'll read them and then I'll read it again at the end. Option A, that we approve the 2024 grants and donations request attached to the report as recommended by administration in the amount of $53,121.55, and that $9,378.45 be allocated for discretionary funds for the total budget of $62,500 for 2024 grants and donations. Or we can do option B, that we approve the 2024 grants and donations request attached to the report as amended and noted in the minutes in the amount of, as we decide, and that there will be so much remaining, be allocated for discretionary funds to a total of whatever we decide. So, Ms. McDonald.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So tonight before you have the request we received during our allocation or application period for grants and donations. We are coming in advance of the budget. We have many local groups who are fundraising, and we wanted to give them the opportunity to know if they could expect the funds or not, including Charland Skating Club having their big anniversary in a month or two, I believe, so a little plug for them. So I'd ask council if you'd like to, I think last year we just went through the chart. I'm not sure if you'd like to do that again. To you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I saw some head shakes there, so yes, we'll go through the, oh, Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading through it, I was a little concerned. There seems to be quite a few organizations now are just putting down 4,000 because they know that's our limit. They don't seem to be giving us as much information as I would like as to why they're at 4,000. They know that's the limit. Let's ask for everything we can get. And it seems to be kind of sneaking up and up and up and up. I don't know what the solution to it is exactly, whether we decrease the limit or do we ask for a little more information? We ask for exactly what they're going to do with it and why they've come up with that number. It just seems to be kind of now it's kind of a thing that if you're a nonprofit in South Glengarry, the township's going to start you off with 4,000 for your year, and then you do whatever you have to do after that to raise the money that you need for your organization, and they like that $4,000 cushion. And I'm not saying all of them, some of them, like I'll use the Horticultural Society in Martintown as an example. They gave us a number of $1,621.55. So they obviously knew exactly what they needed to buy to replace the planters and so forth, and this was the amount of money they needed. And I appreciate that. It was, it's pretty open and honest that this is what we're looking for. We're not asking for the limit. We need this certain amount of money, and if you could help us, we would appreciate it. So it just, I'm not sure where exactly to go with it. Another comment I want to make is in the follow-up emails you sent, the Williamstown Parade Committee is in there asking for $1,000, but they're not in this one. And I couldn't find them anywhere anyway. Now, I do think they put in their request a little bit late, so possibly that's it. I think it came in December. Talking to the organizers, they said it's tough sometimes to get the request in. They hadn't even had the parade for that year, and they were being asked to put in the request for the next year and hadn't finished that year to see how it even went. So for some of them, the deadline maybe was a little hard, but they claimed they would try better for next year. But if the Williamstown Parade isn't in here, usually Martintown and Lancaster both ask for money. Is there anybody else that we normally are expecting to come forward that maybe hasn't done it yet? And what would those numbers be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I noticed we haven't heard from the Lancaster Firefighter Association. I'm not sure if maybe they're still deciding on if they're doing the parade again next year in Lancaster. That was one omission, and I think that was one reason why we wanted to be careful to make sure we left discretionary funds, because we also received a letter outside the application period for a Women's Day initiative. They're looking for funds, so that'll be on a future agenda. As well, I should also note that currently we've held this at $62,500, which was the amount last year, but if council wishes to bring it to $65,000, we've been doing those $2,500 increments, we can, but that's up for your discretion. I just was using that as our limit, again, because as you say, it starts to creep up every year we bring it up. It's for you to decide.
My personal vote is not to raise it this year. I think it's likely going to be a tight budget year, though I have not seen a budget yet, but I'm guessing from the chatter that I'm hearing that it's good, that it's tough to get, and we know what some of these quotes have come in at, and things have been going up, so it's a tight budget year. I don't really want I would prefer that the organizations be a little more frugal in what they're asking for and try not to just ask for the 4,000. That'd be my personal thing. But if we add in the 3 parades at $1,000 a piece, it's another $3,000, and then I don't know what the other one would normally be asking for. But we started using it up. Anyway, the other one, I would like to support the Highland Games at a little higher rate than we normally have. Maybe outside of this, maybe the township itself we could look at, maybe not under the grants and donations, but ask for a little more, or provide a little more to the Highland Games. It's a 75th anniversary, and I think it's quite a worthwhile thing. The other one that wasn't in here was the one that's outside of the township, the 240th anniversary of New Johnstown and the Historical Society. They presented at the counties, and it did seem to be quite an event that's, I think, is going to be quite good for the area. So whether anybody's interested in putting some money towards that, I would be maybe interested. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just quickly get that last question answered because it is on our package presently. So that's the SDNG Loyalist or the, yes, from 1784, the 250. Yeah, are people interested in having that one? So it will be hosted, I believe, in Cornwall, but it does represent SDNG. So I'm seeing a head nod. Okay, so it's $4,000 they're requesting. So we'll put it into the conversation. So let's assume that 4,000's there. I'm sure we're going to support the parades. That's 3,000 there as well. So that means we'd have 2,378. And you had said, was there another late applicant that's still, like you mentioned, a Women's Day? I think it's for the Glengarry District Hospital or something. Yep. How much did they request? Or did they put a request of money? And while you're doing that, I'll kill some air because I want to not leave Deputy Mayor Lang on an island because my thing was it's curious that how easily a 4K max is reached and it is consistent and it's very I loved specific, like we're going to buy this, and some of these organizations are probably going to buy $97,000 of something or repair something, so 4,000 is enough, but it is, I wanted to echo that point too, that like when we set a maximum, I remember the Highland Games not too long ago was $1,000. The Glengarry Sports Hall of Fame was $2,000, and they are they see and they match. So, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm on the same page as the deputy mayor. I think it's too late right now to go back and request every single one of these come back and explain. But I just look, even for an easy look. SLVAS is asking for $4,000 to construct a main entrance arch. Well, it could be a $6,000 project. It could be a $2,000 project, depending what in-kind work they may be getting from local community members. And then we've got the Royal Canadian Legions asking for $200. I mean, we do a lot with them, but I mean, for their Poppy campaign, I think it probably wouldn't, nobody's nose would go up at more than that. I think there's a lot of, I agree with the deputy mayor. I think that everybody's looking at this as, well, they haven't asked us for very much, so we'll ask for the 4,000. I just think, I think we should be asking for a detailed request. We shouldn't just be putting this 4,000 on everybody's bottom line for their budgets, and we should be definitely should be more frugal with this.
All right, and did you have that answer for the Women's Day, I believe?
Yes, through you. It just asks for a donation. It would be appreciated. So there's no specific amount.
And that was for the goes to the hospital in North Glengarry County, I should say. All right, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. As you noted, and you were following these very closely for quite some time, they have a lot of these requests have crept up over time, and I suppose it's too late to go back and ask for more detail, but and I know we were going to talk about revamping the policy for this, so if we can't go back, but for the future, I think we definitely need to ask for more detail. I think, that's one way of being more prudent, more frugal. I would guess that some of these figures might come down slightly. Not saying that folks are, asking more than, that they haven't put effort in, but I think if we ask for more detail, that it might be, the pencil might be sharpened a little bit more. And to Councillor McDonnell's point, I think it is important to know what does this request represent of the project? Is this where the township is doing most of it, or is this where we're, contributing, we're helping for a very large project? And I think that's very important. And I mean, one item I know, like last year, and don't get me wrong, I love Canada Day celebrations. It's my birthday, so I love fireworks on my birthday. But there's requests for a lot of fireworks. I think I know last year the Optimist Club indicated that that their main request was relating to fireworks. So I think maybe that's something that's an example of where we have maybe competing events as well that are at the same time. Maybe we look at doing something that rotates, or again, maybe just understanding like what portion is the township, what does that amount represent of the total of that specific item, I think is important. But, I mean, I think overall, this is, I mean, it's close to the budget that we've set in the past, but I think the Highland Games one perhaps should be viewed slightly differently. Maybe it should be coming out of this. Maybe it should go back to ECDEV. I'm not sure, because I think that's one of the main the justifications too about, you know, our support of that specific event, obviously culturally, et cetera, but it might make sense to be in its own category, since it's not kind of the same as some of these other items, I guess is the best way I can put it. So, okay, thank you.
Ms. McDonald, then Councilor McDonnell had a question.
I was just going to add, it might be something for council to consider to set an amount for all the parades and just stick with that amount. I know, not to single them out personally, but like I think we paid for the candy for Martintown. We sort of covered the whole budget for Williamstown, so it might be something that you pick a figure that would be a contribution, because the intent of our policy is to not be the sole supporter of events. As like my family enjoys the parades, but at the same time, you know, we have to recognize sometimes we have to spread the cost around.
Can I
No,
just
it's-
add one thing?
Oh,
Just, in Williamstown, we don't cover quite the whole thing, because the Fire Department Association covers all the hot dogs, hot chocolate, and, you know, there is a certain amount they cover as well.
it's a good clarification, but as the intent of the policy is to support the community, not be the community, and I think that's, I'll let you go ahead. Councilor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is more of a question for Ms. McDonald. How, how much, I guess, how, would it be a lot to ask if we sent out a generic email to everybody who requested $4,000? I don't say go back to everybody, but everybody who's requested $4,000, be 11 emails, or one email to 11 people, I guess, in BCC, that says, council has decided anybody asking for the max would like a detailed list of what you're going to spend the money on. And we don't need exact figures, but a generic, we're building an arch, we figure it's going to cost us $12,000, we're asking for $4,000, and just one example. Or the skating club's asking for $4,000, we're gonna need $3,500 for our event, and we figured the excess would go to this. Just kind of an outline. I don't say we're gonna say no, we can approve an amount tonight as it is, and if we can cut it back in a few spots, just because, like, there's a few on here, you know, upgrades and maintain equipment. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily our responsibility. If you're operating an organization, we're happy to help, but we should not be your main sponsor and supporter. I'd hope that there's some people going out looking for donations and not doing this just on their, relying on us for their operating. So just, I don't know if that's possible or not, or if it is too tall a feat at this point.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would just say most of the applications did include some detail. Traditionally, we don't release the funds until we receive receipts. So if you wanted to, for as an example, the skating club, they're seeking a $4,000 grant for their anniversary, and then they mentioned surplus funds for subsidizing registrations. You could just cut it as, we'll support the event, and that's up to a maximum of whatever amount you might think is appropriate. That might be one idea. There were applications for most of them, but I can certainly reach out if you'd like more detail. Generally, most of the projects, I think, exceed, like, the amount required will exceed the ask for most of them.
Just kind of a supplemental to that, I guess there's maybe it's an offline thing for us to just go back through and say, I feel this application did not have enough detail and I'd like more, because there are a few, and the poor skating club's getting picked on here, and poor Stephanie's sitting there to take it, but I have no problem if $400 is going to supplement 200 kids learning to skate. My bigger issue is $4,000 for an organization that's going to write, you know, maintain equipment or give no detail even in the application in general. I'm picking on one, like, there's maybe 5 that I want to pick on in this and say, give us some more information. You know, I just feel that some of this has been taken advantage of. So I think maybe there's an offline conversation there to handle this.
Okay, we'll jump to the CEO, and then I think Councilor Jaworski had a question too.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering if council would find it beneficial if we added a column to this and required applicants to state the total value of their project, and if even just that amount would be valuable to council, so that you can get the scale of it as well.
That probably would be advantageous, and just to try and move to a decision, I think I've heard that this might, like, some of these changes might be best for the next application. So, but maybe I'm wrong there, so I think I saw semi-agreement in that we can refine it. So just turn your mic, he just, Councillor McDonnell just mentioned that it's a tight budget year, so yeah, there's a lot of inflationary pressure on terms of infrastructure.
It's almost 1% of our budget.
Yeah, that's very, very fair point. Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. I mean, if we can go back and ask, like, again, the one that Councillor McDonnell is referring to that just says upgrade and maintain equipment, that's one in particular that I have no sense of, like, is that 5 of these things, or, like, for me, but Ms. McDonald, you said something that I'd forgotten, is that you don't release the funds unless you get receipts. So, I guess in some of these, there might be some, because some of these are repeats, and I'm curious, I mean, you probably have the best sense of, like, what do they actually end up using up that whole amount, or what it looks like. But I do really feel that an email with, can we have a bit more detail, I think would be helpful for some of these, the ones that are, like at that 4,000, or just the ones that are, like, because I did look through the applications, but some of them are still very one-liner. Yeah, they're very bare. And I think it's just good for everybody. It's good for their process. It's good for our process if it is more detailed. But I also agree with what the CAO was saying, is that would be another piece of information, is what is this a part of? Like, what's the grand plan? So for me, it's, a piece of information that shows there's a bit of research, and of what a good idea of what that final number will end up being, and what's the grand plan that it's fitting into that total amount.
So then maybe it's prudent to postpone this resolution, in that we want, it seems we want some more information. I saw Ms. McDonald may have wanted to answer Stephanie's question, or Councillor Jaworski's question. We'll go to you, Sam, first.
I think if we want to set a limit, maybe, and we just say this is where we're at, including the parades and that, but if we can cut it back, let's do it, but we're not in the final, I mean, we haven't seen a budget still draft, we're still working through it. As much as this total is about 1% of our budget, the savings aren't going to be huge, but it's more of, I think what we're getting at as council sitting here questioning it is saying, we've got to tighten somewhere, everybody's got to tighten, so it's not fair for us to just give it out willy-nilly. You got to prove it. If you're going to ask for $4,000, you better have a good reason, I think.
Ms. McDonald, sorry, I said McDonnell. You had a comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my only request would be, if we decide to postpone, if we might be able to discuss the Charlotte Skating Club request, because their request was time sensitive, which was one reason we brought the report early, but I'll leave that with council for.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of piecemealing something to put it first, because first is always, like, respectfully, it's always easy to say yes to the first person who asks until you get limited. However, council can shake their head yes if they're willing to do that. That wasn't a judgy comment, it's just a statement. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you. I'm in favor of passing it tonight. I think some of them are time sensitive, and they would like to be able to move forward with their events. Some of these events are happening in the next month or so. But we don't normally, as Ms. McDonald said, we don't normally release the funds till they give us a little bit more information. So it would be a chance for us to maybe ask them to work on it a little bit more before we release the funds.
Councillor Bougie?
Through Mr. Mayor, I would agree with Deputy Mayor Lang, and just looking at these numbers, everything does seem to creep up. Like, I remember not too long ago, these fireworks displays were $500, $1,000, now they're $3,000, $4,000, just because of that limit that we've set. So more detail in the future definitely is important. But I am comfortable passing as is, to have these volunteer groups move along. It's difficult for them as well. They're all volunteers for the most part, do great work. So for that sake and time sensitivity, I think I would be comfortable passing as is tonight.
Okay, so then we will pass it this evening, because there seems to be at the very least 3 individuals. So the question then would be, Councillor Bougie, you're saying as is, but there were the 3 parades, Women's Day who had asked for money without a sum attached to it, and then the SDNG, I called it the Loyalist, but the history of the 1784 250-year anniversary. Royal Townships, yeah, 17, yeah. So did we want to the fire, like the parades are all getting $1,000 under current? No, sorry. Please correct me.
$500 was Martin Town's request last year, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, but they'll have the money that they are requested. So that will be, if there, some of them are coming in late, that will come to us at a later date. 4,000 for the Royal Townships, and then was there an amount that anybody wanted to put towards, if we're going to bring in a few that have applied after our November deadline? The Women's Day, supporting Glengarry Hospital, like a token $500, because they didn't ask, is that something, or 0, 1,000, like I don't, is there any interest? 500 head shake? Okay, so perfect. And Highland Games was the question whether it comes out of here or somewhere else. I know we have our policy, and as council's discretion is to, we are the ones that can go above or below that. So is there interest in going above? If we do go above, we will likely be slightly over budget as of that line. So we would have, if we're adding $7,000, 500, we have an additional 1,800 there for the rest of the year.
Do we have to decide the Highland Games tonight? Maybe
I
we could,
suppose we could do 4,000 now and have a conversation later
yeah,
for the rest.
that's what I'm thinking. We haven't seen the budget, and maybe that'll kind of wake some of us up to think of other things. But the other thing is, I think there's been years we haven't spent the whole thing. Maybe there's a bit of that kicking around we could put in for the Highland Games.
Yes, so for example, if 2023, if there is unspent money, perhaps that can be brought forward and that can accommodate it that way. Councillor McDonnell?
Different department, but if there's, if you want to roll this under ECDEV, there's probably some reserve funds sitting around from the community improvement plan that could be rolled forward. Instead of rolling it forward into next year's budget, we could take a portion of that to supplement the Highland Games, because I do agree with the deputy mayor that I think we get more than $4,000 as a municipality, not let alone excluding the ECDEV piece of it. But in general, I think they treat the municipality very well, and they do a lot for us on the weekend of, and they do take care of us. So.
Okay, so for that example, perhaps a staff report saying where the money will come from if it needs to be at that level. I don't know if it's a small amount, if that's administrative, but follow the policy, either coming from the CIP leftover money this year or grants and donations left over at the end of this year. We'll leave that to administration to make that decision. We have the amended amount would add, and Ms. McDonald, did you have your hand up for a question, or do you want me to just continue on with this? I'm not in error, I hope.
If I can just ask if we can get direction to move the money forward left over from last year as part of the resolution, that would be helpful just to have the budget for this year.
Okay, well, I'll just take a moment and discuss with the professionals to make sure I do it properly. Those on camera, apologies for a brief moment here. What is the proper title for the ST&G Royal Townships?
It's the
4,000 to the. Ms. McDonald, could you provide the expected costs for the parades?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was $500 for Martintown last year, and the Lancaster Firefighters Association requested $1,500 last year.
And just for the record, Williamstown was 1,000. And also there was some thought to the resolution to add money coming either out of the CIP from 2023 into the next year or leftover grants and donations money. Again, thank you for your patience with us. There is a question of Ms. McDonald. Go ahead.
It was just a comment, as for my carry forward request from last year's budget. It's approximately $6,000 that went unspent because we weren't asked for the $5,000 for the hospital recruitment campaign.
So 6,000 brings us to 10, so that, we'll put it from last 2023 grants and donations. Again, thank you for your patience. It's always fun to do numbers on the fly. So I'm going to read a motion, and I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. We're going to split this into two requests. Or no, I'll deal with one on the floor. So we chose option B, which we did some amendments, so I'll read it again because it has been some time. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-16 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the 2024 grants and donations requests attached to the report as amended and noted in the minutes in the amount of $60,621.55 and that $1,878.45 be allocated for discretionary funds for a total budget of $62,500 for 2024 grants and donations. All those in favor? Carried. Now we will make a separate motion, and I'll ask for a mover in a second. I'll just read the motion as it is, and this is in regards to the 2023 funds moving to 2024 for the Highland Games 75th anniversary. So the motion would read, be it resolved that the $6,000 be allocated to the 2024 grant request from the Glengarry Highland Games from the 2023 grants and donations surplus. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Jaworski, Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Glad to not do that at the end of a budget meeting. 7J. Yes, 7I, my apologies. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the following amendment to transfers from reserves for 2023 budget year. Transfer from General Reserve, $236,000. Transfer from Planning Department Reserves, $5,500. Transfers from Fire Department Reserve, $20,000. Transfer from Recreation Building Reserves, $200,000. Transfer from Karen View Park Reserve, $20,000. Transfer from Parkland Reserve, $60,000. Transfer from Land Sale Site Reserve, $0. Transfer from Streetlight Cornwall Electric Surplus, $58,812.35. And Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So just a note I'd like to state at the beginning of the schedule, there's some closing balances for these reserves. Just note that those are projected closing balances, and we haven't finished our year end or received our 2022 final numbers. We just wanted to clarify that. Again, this is mostly a housekeeping report for our needs. We have to show at the end of 2023 reserve transfers that we didn't go forward with, and so this resolution is something we require for our auditors.
Are there any questions? And just that comment is a big one because the 2022 numbers are subject to change. So if you see something different, please be aware of that. All those in favor? Carried. Moving to 7J. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-18 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry receive and accept the Karen View Park Concept Plan and supporting documents prepared by Think Design for future consideration. Ms. Harbers.
Hi, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This report, I'm just coming back to Council with the final concept plan for Karen View Park. It's attached to the report, along with the Raisin Region Conservation comments, as well as we did consult with them. I will mention, I know we haven't gotten to budget yet, but I don't have any large items from this earmarked for 2024. As we know, it's tight with budget items, but we do have a small reserve fund for this park. If there is something that does come up that we want to invest in the short term, but I would really like to use this concept plan in order to look at funding opportunities, which that's what this concept plan will help us with. And then also just beginning to maintain the grounds, maybe some more grass mowing and cleaning up the site just in the short term. So, so this report is just for council to accept it. And unless you have any questions.
Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for this. I think I agree with you. I think it's going to be a stepped approach as to finishing this project. It's going to be a large one. There's a lot of work down at that site. It's a beautiful concept when you look at it, and then you look at the site, and there's a lot of work to get it to that concept or anywhere near that. So I agree. I think there's a small fund there that we can use for the regular maintenance of it, and maybe if there's an opportunity, for example, grindings off the 401 to build up a base for the parking and things that we can add aggregates to after and kind of do make cost-efficient investments as over time until we get that, hopefully a funding stream for the project of this size. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, and it looks a very detailed concept, and I think it'll be very well received for the public.
Thank you, Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you very much for the process and coming to its conclusion. And I think it'll be very helpful for what I hope is, grant applications, because as has been stated, they are proposing some very nice things that are outside of our means at this point, but it definitely helps guide so that we can, move forward step by step. And I do appreciate how the resolution was written with the for future consideration at the end of the sentence, because I think, sometimes there's fear that when we accept a report like this, it means, oh, we're doing it. It's like, no, we're going to consider this as we go along. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully, we'll be implementing small things as we go. Thanks.
All right. All those in favor? Carried. 7K, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-19 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry recommend to the United Counties of SDNG, or Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, to approve the proposed official plan amendment for the property legally described as part of Lot 9, Concession 1, being Part 1 of Reference Plan 14R5459 in the geographic Township of South, or Lancaster, now in the Township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry, to redesignate the subject property from the agricultural resource lands designated to special land under special land use district designation in order to permit highway commercial uses, including transportation terminal and warehouse distribution center uses on this subject land. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you mentioned, the purpose of this staff report this evening is for council to consider an official plan amendment application and to make recommendation to the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry Council for them to make a decision on the official plan amendment request, as they are the approval authority. You'll see that my report this evening looks a little different than the normal planning reports because we don't have to provide a full rationalization at this stage. Council's simply making the recommendation. But there's a few things that I would like to highlight this evening for council and the public. So as you mentioned, the purpose of this official plan amendment is to allow for a special land use district designation that would permit highway commercial uses, including transportation terminal and warehouse distribution uses. You will see within the staff report that we highlight sections of the provincial policy statement that it conforms to, as well as we explain then the purpose of the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. If the official plan amendment is approved by County Council, we will be bringing a staff report to Council at a later date to deal with the zoning amendment. And that staff report will have much more detail in terms of conformity to the PPS, the official plan if approved, and then we'll talk about next steps and what's required in terms of additional work and site plan control. We did go through the public process as required, and you'll see in the staff report that we've included the requirements, or the comments, I should say, from the Ministry of Transportation, as well as from CN and the Raisin Region Conservation Authority. You'll see that there were no significant comments of concern that would result in recommendation to refuse the amendment. You'll also note that during the public process, we didn't have anyone attend our public meeting. However, we did have a nearby property owner reach out to us that was looking for clarification on the proposed development, as well as providing some comments of historical traffic accounts and concerns. And I did meet with the gentleman and made him aware of what the entire proposal was about, and that we would continue to keep him in the loop throughout the process. So at this point of time, you'll see in our resolution that we are recommending that council does recommend to the United Counties of SDNG council to approve the official plan amendment. And if there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you, Ms. Haley. As I recall, when we had this presented, or when there was the public meeting, there was a comment about the additional studies required with regards to setbacks to the municipal drain. And I was wondering if you could just touch on that specific topic, please.
Sure. Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. You will see that in the site-specific zoning amendment, they're looking for a reduction of the watercourse setback from 30 meters to 10 meters. In order to be able to consider and support that reduction, we did need to request a scoped environmental impact study that would focus on the fish habitat that would be located or could be located in that drain. We have since received a copy of the environmental impact study, and that copy does recommend a reduction, and it will be peer-reviewed. So the reduction is not being dealt with in the official plan amendment, although there are components of our official plan or policies within the official plan that speak to it having to be reviewed. If and when we get to the stage where the official plan amendment's been approved and we're now recommending the zoning bylaw amendment, we want to be in a situation where you're very comfortable with the requested reduction and that we can support that requested reduction. So as you'll see in my report, we just recently received it, and I've sent out emails to qualified consultants to do the peer review. And hopefully we'll find someone who can complete that review in a timely fashion. And then if they can support the reduction, we would then recommend that to be approved. If such thing, that peer review comes back and they can't support 10 meters and they're recommending a different number, well, then we'd work with the applicant and the consultant to make sure, we're all on the same page, we're implementing the policies or interpreting the policies accordingly, and then a recommendation would be made to council. I do apologize that this is a little bit backwards. I think you're all aware that development or site alteration occurred on the site in advance of these approval processes. So we're doing the best we can to still follow the policy, but work with the developer because they do want to move forward and obtain their approvals as quickly as possible. So thank you for your understanding of that, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with more information at the zoning bylaw amendment staff report stage that will make us more comfortable in that reduction.
If I may follow up, because that citizen did reach out, and it's more of a future action perhaps, is if we do have a committee of the whole about roads, maybe we tack on this area, because it is going to be developed, and it is a point in time where we're maybe not this particular property, but the area around it, be north or east and west of those properties. It's going to how do you say? We're planning for the future, and this is an opportunity to take a moment and say, what do we want there and what's good planning. I think maybe I'm on an island, but I think it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about that area and what you see in the next 20, 30 years, because these 401 corridors or off-ramps do become quite something. Right now it's next to all agricultural, and maybe that, just to provide us some information like that, if you need direction, would council, even if it was a 15-minute presentation and at a committee of the whole sometime in our term, is I guess what I'm asking. Would that be okay? Okay. Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess, yeah, if we do a committee of the whole regarding roads and infrastructure, municipal infrastructure, and it might be just something to take into consideration as we look forward to looking at the entire 401 corridor. Curry Hill Exit is not alone. We do have land along, less land for development along at Lancaster, but there is significant development and speculation going on at Summerstown, as well as future possibly at Boundary. So we have a large section of the 401 corridor, and there's a lot of vacant land along it, and what 30 years down the road will look like. I agree. If we have the choice between buildings and parking lots, I'll take buildings. So let's have something that contributes to the municipality as opposed to just taxing our infrastructure. So there's a way to strategize in a way to do some advanced planning, something we can look to. But agree, it's not a major pressing issue right now.
Sometimes you say things in a way that I can't, so thank you for that. That's how I feel. So yes, not pressing, but very important to our municipality long term. All those in favor of the motion is read? Carried. Moving to 7L, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-20 be received and that the property legally described as part of Lot 3, Concession 9 in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in the township of South Glengarry, being comprised of pins 6715305516 and 6715302991, be declared as surplus to the needs of the township, and furthermore, that administration be directed to obtain an appraisal of the subject property, followed by the preparation of a report to council to provide options on how to sell the land, which will include a request for proposal option. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the staff report this evening is really for two reasons. One was to provide you an update on township land that has been previously sold or dedicated. So I'm going to start with that component. You may recall in 2021 and 2022, the council received a request from the Habitat for Humanity to look for lands to be donated. And at that time, council agreed that the parcel of property that we owned in Green Valley also provided instructions to administration to look at ways to dividing that parcel of property because it was quite large for a partially serviced lot. At that time, that work was completed, and it was agreed that council would donate 2 parcels that could result in 2 semi-detached being constructed, which would be a total of 4 units. You'll see in the staff report that over the end of 2022 and into 2023, the lawyer for the Habitat for Humanity had discovered that we actually didn't legally own the land. So it's been an interesting exercise. This subdivision was started, I believe, in 1961, registered in 1963, with the intent of the land being dedicated for the purposes of parkland. Our clerk was able to do some research and find that there was a bylaw passed that dedicated that land as parkland, but for some unknown reason, it was never registered accordingly or transferred into the ownership of Charlottenburg Township at the time. So we now have our solicitor, Paul Surduk, looking into this, and hopefully we'll have it rectified as soon as we can. And we're hoping that it can be done as soon as possible, because Habitat for Humanity is interested in developing a schedule as to when they can commence the process to obtain an interested family for this parcel. So we'll continue to keep council posted on that topic. Moving on to the lots that we sold in 2023, you may recall that we have sold 6 building lots, 5 of which were located in Lancaster Heights, and 1 of which was located in Birchwood Estate subdivision. And then you may also recall that 2 parcels of property were donated to Raisin Region Conservation Authority that will continue to be used as conservation lands. So I now want to speak about the second component of my staff report this evening. We have a parcel of property in the municipality that is formerly known as Lancaster Estate subdivision that abuts Lancaster Heights subdivision. This parcel is approximately 94 acres, and it was known as Lancaster Estate subdivision because in the early 80s it did receive a subdivision approval and it was registered. Unfortunately, the developers were unable to move forward with the development, and it resulted in taxation, unpaid taxation incurring, that the municipality then ended up taking over the ownership of the land. We've since then deemed the subdivision to no longer be a subdivision, therefore it now remains as one large, approximately 94-acre parcel that the township owns. We have discussed this parcel on a few occasions, knowing it was one of the larger parcels left in the Lancaster Heights area. And I think it's now time to move forward to consider what we can do with the property. But from a planning perspective, I want to be cautious on how this property is going to be used or developed, because we want to make sure, in my opinion, we should make sure that any future landowner is going to create a use or uses that are very compatible with a residential subdivision. And we also want to make sure that the use is also not going to create any traffic concerns, that it can be accessed safely, because you're essentially driving through Lancaster Estate subdivision to get to that, or Lancaster Heights subdivision, excuse me, to get to that location. So you may have noticed in my staff report, I mentioned that a member of the public did reach out with interest for the land. I'm not going to share what that member of the public wants to do with the property at this time, as I feel it's important to keep that confidential, because if council chooses to declare this surplus and allows us to proceed with a public process, that individual will have an opportunity to bid on that parcel of property. So moving forward, the staff report this evening basically says to receive the report and then to declare the lands surplus that are described as part of Lot 3 Concession 9, which is that former Lancaster Heights subdivision, as well as to direct administration to obtain an appraisal, which is required as per bylaw 2121, and allow me the time to come up with a report for council to show you the unique ways that we could request a proposal process and look for different options on how development can occur. I have been in touch with a few other municipalities to learn from them kind of their pros and cons of lands that they've gone through a process similar to this. And I do look forward to having the opportunity to work on this and bring this back to council if council's interested. So that would be the end of my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any questions from around the table? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. McDonald. I would, with this, we've done, I think, a good job and done well by the residents to, declare land surplus. It was there to be developed, and, we've been pretty successful in having several lots purchased. So I think that's, that's the right thing to do with these kind of assets. But like with this large piece that's still left in Lancaster Heights, I agree completely with Ms. Haley that, however this gets developed, it's such a large piece and it's right beside an existing subdivision that I think it's really important that it is compatible. And I mean, thinking at some of the processes that other municipalities have used, like for example, what North Glengarry used when they were selling their municipal office, sort of like a offer for proposal. I think that would be, a good way to help, put some framework around the process. But I think this is a kind of property that, I mean, as far as I understand, as a township, we don't have plans to do anything with this piece of property. We don't, and even future imaginary, things that we could imagine we could do hypothetically, it doesn't really fit within the township plan. So I think it makes sense to see if we can move ahead and find someone who can make better use of it. So thank you.
And I would encourage council to just put like planting a seed is like there will be revenue from this, like what we can do with that revenue. If I was to provide any influence, I always think of taxation offset. So like say it was 1.4 million the first year, you could put 350,000 more towards roads, and then the next year you put 300 and taxation's 50. So you slowly build it in that way. So that's, I have thoughts to that with any surplus money, but I mean it's open to council's discussion and thoughts because you don't. It's a one-time funding amount that can be spent very easily. We have the needs, and maybe it is an immediate needs. It's just do some thinking on that because we do have some massive infrastructure things, and I believe we have some, I can't say land barons, but people who know land better than I do, and North Lancaster, I don't know if that's like the value of it. We'll get that appraisal, and we can make decisions subsequent to then, but just give that some thinking before the number comes in because, it's important to give thought to where the money goes. So all those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. And sorry if I hope I didn't get on a soapbox there. I just care about the one-time money. So 7M, proposed township industrial park. Yes, I'm. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougee. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-21 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry directs administration to determine land use options for the township-owned land legally described as Part 12, 13, and 14, Concession 1 front in the geographic township of Schlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry, also known as PIN 6713104115. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report this evening is to discuss what I was hoping would be our township industrial park. In 2022, we received permission from council to embark on a process to determine the developability of this parcel of property that's approximately 174 acres in size. When looking at parcels of property, one of the first things we do is we look to see if there's any constraints. And we did notify council that according to our official plan, we had a few constraints that were identified, one being significant woodlands. There was also some coastal wetlands, and we had a municipal drain in that location. So that tells me that really our first step of the process is to engage an environmental company who's qualified to complete an environmental impact study. In 2022, we had budgeted $35,000 in hopes that we would have had in 2023 the chance to complete the EIS, or excuse me, to complete the EIS as well as to commence a boundary and topographic survey. So the EIS was started in the fall of 2022 and needed to be completed in 2023. And it didn't have the results that we were hoping for. So I'm now going to jump to kind of the summary component of the page. We learned in March of 2023 that there were some significant endangered and threatened species in that area, and that further information needed to be completed. So we then agreed that we should do further information in regards to fish habitat as well as butternuts. So you'll see in the table on page 5 of my report that there were 3 wetlands that were found in the subject area. I also provided an image of those wetlands, and 2 of them are recommended to have further evaluations because it's potential to have a provincial interest. And if that comes back and if there's a provincial interest, that really limits developability. Also, you will see I included in the report an image that demonstrates the location of several butternut trees, and also a map that identifies where the fish habitat is. You'll see in my report that there could be, you know, a few options to consider moving forward. However, I can't promise you that we would get the results that we would need, and we would spend quite a bit of more money in evaluating those wetlands and also doing the health assessment on the butternut trees to determine what can be removed and what can't be removed. And I deal with developers almost on a daily basis, and this is exactly what our developers go through. When we're looking at our own policies and implementing either the provincial policy or our own official plan policies, we expect the public to do these studies because that's required. So I feel that we've done the right things as a municipality by following the same process that a developer would. We really do need to evaluate the environmental components to determine if it makes sense to move forward or not. I'm now going to summarize the dollar component just so council understands where we're at. In 2022, council had budgeted $35,000 to allow us to start the environmental impact study and the survey work. We didn't have time to start the survey work because the surveyors were so busy at that time, and the environmental work commenced. Once we realized in early 2023 that there was going to be some constraints, I really felt it was not worth our while to move forward with the surveyor until we knew exactly what we were dealing with. In 2023, we budgeted $75,000. So in total, we've spent approximately $20,000. So we've not spent the money that council has budgeted, but I feel we've done the responsible thing by not jumping ahead and spending money on survey works when maybe the environmental components weren't coming back the way we hoped. And you'll see in my recommendation that I am not recommending that we move forward any further in terms of additional studies. I do indicate, though, that in the staff report, you could direct administration to determine what our land use options are. And there are a few things that we could consider, and I didn't get into this in great detail in this report, as I feel we need to do it in stages. But it's possible that we could consider maybe one lot creation on County Road 27, but we do have to look at what that setback is going to be from the wetland that was identified. The other option is that we could maybe look at improving the forest cover, or we could partner with the Raisin Region Conservation Authority to maybe enhance the wetland. And I think there's different options that we could do to that parcel of property to have it be an important municipally owned parcel that can contribute to the environment. However, if council disagrees with me on these findings, and I know this was a lot of information for you to read when I attached those in 100 and some pages, but I do feel it's best that we don't pursue a major redevelopment in this location. And that's all I have for now. It's a lot to explain, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Right, are there any questions from around the table on this particular one? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion is read. Carried. And thank you very much for finding an answer so prudently. Moving into bylaws, 8A. Moved by Councillor Bougee, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-22 be received and that bylaw 2024-006, being a bylaw to adopt the per diem and for council members policy, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 5th day of February 2024. Before bothering Ms. MacDonald, it's pretty straightforward. Would people be okay with voting on it? All those in favor is read. Oh, sorry, Ms. MacDonald.
Sorry, I just have to note that the schedule, we had to update the schedule for the bylaw because it didn't reflect the change, the per diem rate being from 1% to 3%. So we have amended that, and I just wanted to make sure you knew the policy had been amended.
Thank you very much. With that being said, all those in favor? Carried. I have seen a few members take a, we'll say a health break. Would people be okay with a 5-minute health break at this moment before we go into items for consideration? All right, so we will reconvene at 8:53. Welcome back, and we're moving into items for consideration. 9A, First Line Road tree removal. Ms. McDonald?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. These next three items under items for consideration are all budget notes for council, so it's an opportunity for you to hear about some of the items before we get into it with you, just so that you're aware of what's coming your way. If you have questions, feel free to ask. We're not particularly looking for direction at this time, just discussion and dialogue, if that kind of makes sense. So this first one is buried in the roads operational budget. I really didn't want to derail the budget talks to explain what's going on here. So First Line Road, south of South Service, we have a number of trees within the right-of-way, roughly 100. They're on the east side of the road adjacent to the Lancaster campground. And earlier this year, during one of the windstorms, we had one fall on a gazebo. And so there's a claim, again, anyways, there's a claim for that. Upon looking at the trees, there are a number that likely should come down. When we look at the road, it hasn't been, when we look at the road and what it is, and we look at our right-of-way policy, which requires us to clear a 4-meter clear zone from the edge of the pavement outwards and prioritize based on traffic volumes, the small stretch of road with 3 homes doesn't have a ton of that. So it is very really at the bottom of our priority for that. However, now that we have been made aware of these trees that do have the potential to fall, and one of them has fallen, and we've taken out a few other smaller ones that we were able to do in-house, we feel that there's a need likely and a huge risk in the future of them falling again. The campground, as you can see in the image, has 30 campsites, and they're right adjacent to the road, so that they're tight. They're really, really tight. Administration looked at a few options. We can do nothing, so status quo, accept the risk, and let it be what it may be. That is not fantastic risk management. We can actively monitor and remove the trees as necessary by bringing in an arborist. However, that is putting a lot of staff time and monitoring over a great number of years on a road with not a lot on it, although it does abut a campground, and that's certainly not the treatment that we provide to our other open and public roads. Like, we drive by and we certainly don't get an arborist to go out. So when we looked at it, we could also reclaim the clear zone in keeping with our right-of-way policy and just take those trees down, and then we can mow that right-of-way moving forward in the future. We went out and we surveyed the trees, so there are 100 trees. For everyone's information, in 2023, so last year, we had another area where a tree fell on, from an unopened road allowance, fell onto somebody's shed or fence, and we had to take down a number of trees. We expended, I don't know, $12,000 to take down a ton of trees, so and those were just drops. For context, to take down a large tree was $1,500, and that was just to drop it. So if you have to drop it and haul it or drop it and chip it, it becomes more. So using just the dropping 2023 values, these 100 trees would be $70,000 to come down, and we have to do something with them after. We can't just leave them on First Line Road because that would be irresponsible. And they're not great trees, like they're pioneer trees for the most part, so this was cleared at some point in the past, and it's just whatever's grown up over time. So they're not like hardy, beautiful trees. They are going to fall down at some point. So there'll be an ongoing risk to the municipality, just given the development that's right up against the road or against the road and the fence line. So buried in the roads budget, and council will have the opportunity to do whatever they'd like with that line item, is $100,000 to embark on taking down these trees along First Line Road. If it's successful through the budgeting process, we would communicate and collaborate with the Lancaster Park, so the abutting owners. We would go out with parks for a tree removal RFP and have our standing offer rates and pick away at what we could with the money that we are given or like allotted to this project, and hopefully remove as much as possible without taking on years and years of tree monitoring on a road with 3 homes. Just in this, it's really a matter of risk versus staff time versus dollars. So they're within our right-of-way. They shouldn't be there. Ideally, we'd have beautiful, clear 4-meter right-of-ways, and I believe we'll get there in the next kind of 15, 20 years. So at some point in the future, this road will need to be tackled. Trees just get bigger or they fall. They don't tend to get smaller. So, these 38 smalls may all remain small, but many of them will bump up to the small medium and then the medium large, so the price just continues to grow. So if council has questions or thoughts, again, no decisions, we're just kind of giving you a heads up that this will be buried in that operational budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question, I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Lang and then Councillor Jaworski, would this be 100,000 in addition to the regular brushing? Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, and thanks for the report. I think it's very prudent to bring it to us now rather than in the middle of budget, and then it kind of derails budget for a while, and we haven't had time to look at it. I was hoping to get down there this afternoon and drive it and have a look at it, but I didn't make it, but I will definitely before we get to budget and talk about it. Something for some of the residents who may have had a hard time with some of the brushing we did this year. This is one of the reasons we need to really be on top of that brushing, is because those smaller trees, you know, the 4-6 inch trees that maybe are a bit of a mess when we mow them down, turn into $100,000 job to do, you know, what is it, maybe a kilometer of road. It wouldn't even be a kilometer, it would be likely half a kilometer. So I think it's imperative that we keep our brushing under control, and even though it may look a little messy as we're trying to get cleaned up and get it to the stage where we want it, we can't just let the stuff grow up and think that it's nothing, because it turns into, you know, $1,500 per tree to take them down. So I'm hopeful that we can come up with something that's more economical. I think it is too much money to spend on that half a kilometer or whatever road it is, and for 3 houses. But at least we're thinking about it now, and we'll see what we can come up with between now and then.
Thank you. And on that, is it possible to, I know the county sometimes in the forest, Summerstown trails, they'll do their chainsaw training there, so perhaps getting some chainsaw training there, maybe not possible. Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through Mayor McDonald. So a couple of things, and it's about 650 meters long, Deputy Mayor Lang. The things that came to mind, like right away, is like, you know, this is essentially a driveway for, and maybe the Google Maps isn't up to date, but it looks like, well, 3 properties, but 2 homes. But part of me, and this kind of fits in this road rationalization, is, you know, does it make sense to maintain a road like this to the same standard as the other roads? Again, I'm just trying to think out of the box, because $100,000 is a lot of money. I mean, I hope there's ways that we can bring that down. And so I guess, you know, we definitely have to reduce the risk. Definitely, if there's trees there that are likely to fall down, we definitely need to deal with those regardless. But do we need to keep, you know, this road, do we need to get it to the same level? I mean, and I don't even know what the potential for development, that's another question. Like, what's the potential for development for this, for the property down there? Like, if all of a sudden, oh, we could have lots of lots down there, then maybe, you know, for the future it makes sense. But if that's highly unlikely, then again, what's, you know, why are we making this, you know, like a driveway much nicer, I suppose. And I guess my other question when I'm looking at it is, and I don't know the answer to this, but in terms of like setbacks of the park to the road allowance as well, I don't know if those kind of lots have to respect the same setbacks that we might, you know, expect in other situations. But and I know that the lot lines on our mapping sometimes it's not necessarily exactly equal to what the surveying is, but that does look like in some cases things are crossing the line. So I guess there's a couple of things. I definitely we need to do something. We need to ensure that, you know, our property is not endangering anybody. But I would, you know, however we can be creative, you know, does it make, again, like, do we need to maintain this road to the same width as others if it's highly unlikely if 2 cars will meet as they're traveling on it? You know, maybe it just be a single lane. Not one way, but, you know, again, it fits into the road rationalization discussion. Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, part of the issue in this one is that the east side, the campsites are just so close. So are the campsites that our trees are falling onto. So it's not so much to, I mean, our policy gives us that 4-meter width, but it's not really for the road that would be taking it down. It'd be to reduce liability heading eastward. In terms of the property line, there's a really old fence. I believe that's probably where the property line is. The trees are intertwined between, you know, they've grown up and through this fence, so it's kind of messy. And I did talk to the general manager, of 3 words: planning, building, and enforcement. And I believe what she said was if it was a new campground going in or a new development, then we could enforce setbacks. But since it's existing, we're kind of stuck with what we've got. Is that, she's nodding her head, yes.
Please.
No, I understand that, like, it's about going that direction, but again, like, that's why I'm emphasizing, let's make sure we take down the trees that are problematic, but have to have it to the same level, perhaps, considering the traffic, in terms of clearing out the, really bringing it to the same level as other local roads might not be warranted.
Are there thoughts from other members? All right. Then food for thought as we get into budget. And then 9B, Lozone Bridge, Kinloch Road, 2024 budget notice. Ms. McDonald?
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This is the bridge on Kinloch Road that we've been talking about, I think, since August, September. So there are no surprises going into the budget. The capital budget includes the option to close this bridge. The staff report outlines the costs being incurred by the township at this time to keep it open. So we are monitoring it bi-weekly. The monitoring involves in-water work or presently on ice work. So it's a 3-person job. That's not an inexpensive monitoring adventure to have someone else do for us. So if we were to keep it open, the minimum amount of money that we're expending on the structure is $90,000 just to maintain that biweekly monitoring. I did ask the consultants when they went out at the end of 2023, now that you've been observing it for 4 months, do you think we can reduce the intervals, because this is a lot? And they said, no, we really recommend continuing on. So that's in writing in one of our monitoring reports. They did note that right now it's during a freeze thaw, or everything's frozen, although it's not really, but the hope is it's frozen and nothing changes. But through the spring, as things thaw and the earth starts to move, that's when we're at risk, the highest risk of the bolt lines moving further apart. So again, just as a heads up, when we're going into the budget, the recommendation is to close the structure. So we will have already incurred, depending on when budget happens, let's say that we close it at the end of March, we will have already expended about $20,000 in monitoring. We need to do one more later in the year just to have a biannual check, and we would need about $5,000 to put up the barriers and stuff. So we'd be looking at expending $30,000 on the structure if it was to be closed at the end of March. And again, replacement is expensive. Unlikely we could get it done this year, just with all of the the topo and the geotech that we need to do. It's a really tough one, this bridge, but that's where we landed when we looked at all of the other pressures, and they're outlined in my report. So it's all in there for council and the public to read. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's one that we discussed, I think, at a committee of the whole meeting just momentarily. And if there's no questions around the table, at least it gives us something to mull on. I did appreciate the 4-kilometer inconvenience, because if you're driving 60 kilometers, it means the most impacted person would be impacted by 4 minutes. And if that is true, there's some tough decisions, and yeah, there's just tough decisions. And I guess we have media in the audience, but $2 million for 4 minutes. And I think you also provided the vehicles per day in there, and 75 and 80 per day. Times that by 4, and it's a heavy question for us to debate. And thank you for providing it in advance. And I think probably we'll move on to Councilor Jaworski.
Yeah, no, I think it's, well, we've talked about this issue, sort of generally speaking, about the cost of certain things and where should we be spending our folks' hard-earned dollars. And I think, though, just sort of thinking, sort of generally, my thinking is that, to close it in March, I think if we, if eventually that is the decision that is taken in budget is to close it, I think residents should have a little bit more, because I mean, that's like a month, 2 months. I think folks should have a little bit more time to acclimatize to that, if that is the direction it goes. I think the timeline should be slightly longer, but yeah. Thank you for this information. It is a heavy one, this one, to consider.
I do like the comment of timing too, because there is agricultural needs to have thought to, right? Because we always mention our biggest business is our agriculture, so like the timing, if it goes that way, is thoughtful. So good point, Councillor Jaworski. No further questions on that one. 9C, or comments, Butternut Lane Bridge 2024 budget option.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'll continue on with my bad news. So again, a heads up for budget, when council looks at the capital program, it will also recommend status quo for the Butternut Lane Bridge. This is the bridge near Glen Nevis that was closed in March of 2023. Again, just when we look at the pressures right now for structures and for our infrastructure assets, it was one that had fewer, I suppose, residents using it on a daily basis is kind of what it came down to. I did make a note that if capital budget was made available, administration would recommend to remove the structure, which would likely be about $50,000, but I think that would even be a challenge, so likely status quo for the year. I did have one, so I know Mayor McDonald and Councillor Jaworski know this, but we have a bunch of residents who write in about the structure fairly, not regularly, but they're definitely interested in how it's progressing, so I keep them updated every time something goes public on our council agenda, and they've been appreciative of that. And one of them wrote in this afternoon or earlier this morning, and they wanted, and I just thought it was worth mentioning since it's timely, that they disagreed with point number 2, which says at the time of closing the bridge, the bridge was not part of any recognized recreational path nor part of any official snowmobile trail, and they just disagreed, saying that, well, how could it? Their signage, so it must have been recognized. When I go back to our recreation standards bylaw, which was passed in 2010 and updated in 2012, it lists the recognized trails in South Glengarry, and this is not one of them, and that can be provided by the clerk to anyone, I would think. I don't believe it's been updated since then, so that's one thing. Also, their second point was it's kind of circular logic. Well, you've closed it, so now it's not open. So you're saying that no one's actively using it, but that's because you closed it. Yes and no. Specifically, the comment was about like a winter trail use, so the groomers haven't been able to go over it in quite a number of years. So the history on that is in 2015, we undertook a structural evaluation to determine what kind of live loads could be carried across the structure. And in 2015, hopefully it said 15, that structural evaluation noted that it was sufficient for snowmobiles, but certainly not for groomers. So that's when the township put up, so they narrowed what could go on. So this structure has not been identified on a recreational trail through our recreation standards bylaw, and it hasn't been able to accommodate a groomer in at least 8 years. And in those 8 years, we haven't, to my knowledge, received petitions or a lot of or fundraising from the snowmobile clubs for continued use of the structure or the path on the east side of Glen Nevis. In fact, all of their current trail maps have they've gone elsewhere. So I do understand that it just, I'm just going to be quite honest, and I know it's not like how I'm supposed to say it, but this just really sucks. and I'm really sorry to have to bring these to council. So heads up, this one also, status quo stays closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments ahead of budget from council? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Thank you, not thank you for the bad news, but I mean, we can't, we can't be investing money in this specific case when we don't have money for other ones that are of higher necessity. But maybe because it is, it was recreational, considered recreational, even if it's not under the recognized or official sort of rubric. maybe at some point, it could be, the subject of a, I don't know, grant fund, some sort of grant application or something specific to recreation, so that, it's at least on our radar that, that might be an avenue for something like this. But yeah, it is really unfortunate, the situation. The one item, though, I did want to just touch on specifically is how it impacts, like, that be conscious of or be aware of, how it impacts the one business that was using it, the Zoller's maple products. So because, that is a little bit more, what do I want to say? More critical, I would say, than a recreational. So, but is my understanding correct that they have an alternate access? Or is this going to be something that we need to look at a bit more just to make sure? I think Councillor McDonnell made a comment about situations where bridges are removed and then folks don't let you remove them because they need them. I'm not suggesting that's what's going to happen in this case, but I just wanted to touch on that specific item of this report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe they've been looking at making alternate arrangements ever since it closed last March. Anytime I've talked to the Zollers, thank you. I mess it up every time. I'm very sorry, Mr. Zoller. Every time I've spoken with them or corresponded with them, he's been understanding, and he actually reached out yesterday or today. My time is kind of weird, but to say that he appreciated the heads up and that he was expecting this decision. So I believe they've figured it out. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, to sum it up, there are decisions that make sense that aren't enjoyable, and we might have to make some of them. Yeah, it's the nature of infrastructure and taxation, levels of service. We'll move on then to consent agenda. 10C, 2023 brushing program summary. I don't know who brought that one forward. Oh, Councillor Jaworski.
Sorry, I was thinking very sadly about what we were just talking about. I thank you for allowing me to bring this one up. I just wanted to thank our General Manager of Infrastructure for providing this report that we asked for, quite recently, this roundup of the brushing program. And I think there's a lot of very important information here, I think, that will be very useful in conversations if we have, as the snow's starting to melt and some of the brushing activities are sort of becoming apparent again. I think it's really helpful to have this information here. And I think it also just goes to show about how this really, how expensive it can be and how it's really important to be as efficient as possible. It seems that what was done in Trial A seemed to be better received, generally speaking, from the public, but it was not as efficient. Didn't get as much done. Whereas Trial B, I think we kind of learned that it may be, there's a bit more concern in the built-up areas there is concern in the built-up areas, but again, we need to be, we have to make a balance. And so I'm very interested to see how, as we move forward for the next cycle, about trialing a different piece of equipment that sort of combines the best of the two trials so that we can be operationally efficient, but also have folks not as concerned about the aesthetics, even though we know the aesthetics clean themselves up fairly quickly within a season or two. But thanks again for that information.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thanks for the report. It was very interesting, and I think maybe what you're planning for this year is likely going to be the answer, or very close to it. My question is, the roads we did this year, and I'm thinking of some of the areas where we got complaints where some of the brush and trees were a little bit larger size. We've ended up with some stumps, if you want to call them that are 10, 12 feet high. And even the ones that are a little lower to the ground, some of them were sizable. Have we got any kind of a plan to maybe, if we went through and kind of even if it was manual with chainsaw, now that there's not a full tree there anymore, we don't have that risk of it falling on, you know, wires or anything. If we could get some of those stumps down. And my other question is there any thought put towards how we can continue to mow these roads now so that we don't have to go back and do this again? The brush doesn't cut, like some of those larger stumps will regrow quite quickly right from the root if we don't have a way to get our mower through there and to be able to keep it down so that we don't have to be back in the same boat in, you know, like 10 years, we'll be right back where we were if we can't keep it mowed.
Great questions, Deputy Mayor Lang. And the first one, yes, we'll go and manually cut down like the 10-foot spikes that we've left. And we are working on coming up with a plan to remove so with stumps, we would want to let them rot for a few years just so we can go through and whoop a ton out at once, as opposed to grinding out a stump like a month after it's been cut down. So it'll likely be let them rot for a little bit and then go through with a grinder where we can have the most efficiency with our contracted person.
Can I follow up a little bit? I think that's a good idea, and some of the stumps will be just fine and they'll stay, but some of them won't rot if they start to regrow. So we may have to look at some way to stop that regrowth. I know nobody likes to hear that, but some of our, if it happens to correspond with our roadside spraying, that may do it when these small shoots come up in there, and if we're spraying anyway for poison parsnip and noxious weeds there, it may knock them down, but it's something to keep in mind. If you can stop that stump from regrowing, then the stump will start to rot, but if the shoots come up from the stump stays healthy and alive.
Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at it as well, too. I think you're going to have, I think as we look at Trial C, I'm excited to see kind of the outcome of that based on kind of the summary. If you look at them high level, I think Trial A was probably your best bet. Less efficient just based on, like you said, you can't run it down your asphalt roads. They're not, a steel track crawler is not meant to do speed by any means. And I think really the tractor with the rotary head, I just think was based on even just looking at the damages and repairs that happened to the machine in general. I just think that's not the proper use of that machine for what we were doing. It might be fine for brushing and as far as taking down more grass, noxious weeds, things like that. It's not meant to take down trees, and it does leave an ugly job. Like we've said, give it a month in the summertime and these things, they look a lot better, but I think we'll see, I'm excited to see the trial results from Trial 3 with a wheeled excavator, so I think that'll be the best bet, and I'd agree with my colleagues as well, if we can cut down some of those things, and if we can, especially like those, like California maples and things like that, they just grow back way quicker than you can cut them down, even if you cut them to the ground, so just to keep on top of those and make sure we're not having to spend this money and do this every other year and keep them knocked back and in shape. But thanks for the work you're doing.
Yes, and to the public, if you're listening, there is a good map on page 330 of our agenda that shows how much work was done this year. Moving to 10D, 2023 Traffic Collection Program Summary. I believe this was Councillor Jaworski again.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. I just want to thank our infrastructure service student, Kian McDonnell, who put together that report under the guidance of Ms. McDonald. And I mean, the data, this traffic count data is, I mean, it really, really, really is so valuable to so much of what we've been discussing this evening about where we need to spend, our dollars. And I was quite surprised by the counts, just how high they are, like Town. I mean, I think that's kind of county road levels of AADT. So it's hard not to be like, well, so when is the county going to take that one on as a county road? But yeah, I mean, these are things, but we need to have this data, right? If we don't have the data, we can't have these discussions. So I just wanted to thank, like, this is, we're getting to have such a clearer picture of so many of our assets that I think this is really great work. Thanks.
I think Mayor Broad in South Dundas says it data-driven decisions, so like that's quite handy. Am I correct to understand too, just as like a kind of fun to know, did Kean McDonald or McDonnell, did he change his major in university to, given his summer experience? Am I correct in that? So would you just share that? Because that's kind of a fun, like, experiential changing, like a township experience changing a potential career.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Kean came to us as a first-year political science student and enjoyed what he did for us at the Office of Infrastructure Services, including he took this traffic count program and with some guidance just ran with it, which was incredible. And he also ran with our culvert capturing program, so that will come forward. Anyways, he's gone back, picked up his maths, and is hoping to enroll in civil engineering. So that is a neat story.
Thank you for sharing. 10I, resolution lifespan of fire apparatus. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'd like to ask Chief Robertson to speak to that one, if that's okay.
Chief of Fire Robertson.
Thank you, Councillor Jaworski, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So Prince Edward County has forwarded a request to South Glengarry to support the resolution to consider a means to extend the accepted lifespan of fire vehicles in rural municipalities. The Fire Underwriter Survey, which is mentioned in their resolution, it's an agency that supports the insurance industry by establishing insurance rates to private properties within municipalities. The request of Prince Edward County is that the Fire Underwriter Survey create distinct fire apparatus categories for, extend them to rural municipalities, or extend categories for rural municipalities separate from their standard urban municipal structure. This would allow fire services to retain certain vehicles under certain conditions past urban municipal standards. So that's sort of the crux of what this request is. The insurance industry will always support the highest level of fire protection provided by a municipality, but that may not always meet a municipality's desired level of service. So this is something that we've discussed with the SD&G Fire Chiefs Group. We're generally in favor of the ability to extend the life of fire vehicles if conditions warrant, and if the overall fleet meets operational requirements. Our opinion is that municipalities must continue to invest in vehicle assets, very much like our community does. There are means to, under the existing system, to request extensions, but the process is quite burdensome. So basically, the crux of what their resolution is, they're asking that the insurance industry, through the Fire Underwriter Survey, better understands the needs. I mean, we've spoken at length about it tonight, the pressures on rural municipalities, and recognizing that if a vehicle is very well maintained and it meets annual testing, that it is something that can be pushed past urban standards. So it is something that we're doing. Out of our fleet of 17 units, we have 3 that are past the 20-year sort of standard that Fire Underwriter Survey mentions, but we very much do continue to meet those standards. So, we've been successful in requesting that some of those vehicles are extended to some degree. So, thank you.
All right, and may I follow up on that one? Just a question. So I understand that would allow us to keep our, is it the Superior Tanker and Shuttle accreditation for fleet vehicles slightly older? So right now it's 20 years for your frontline vehicle, and there's some, I guess, gray area for standards versus legislation for the rest of it, but it would be able to push that back. So say we can have a fleet that's 22 years old without impacting the insurance rates of our citizens. Is that kind of the idea behind it, to allow it to extend the life of our vehicles and save insurance, or not lose that accreditation?
Yes, exactly. So the insurance, when an insurance company is determining the rates that a resident or a property owner would pay, they use a number of criteria, and one of those criteria is the ability of a fire service to respond in a certain amount of time with a certain number of vehicles, certain number of staffing, and in areas that don't have pressurized municipal hydrants, such as we have in Lancaster, we need to be able to supply water to those incidents. So when all those things are considered, we are meeting both residential and commercial rates of water flow that we can provide to properties across our municipality. So that's a strong piece that our fire service has. But also, if a fire station has, I'll say, 2 vehicles that are well within those suggested years, possibly we can put a 3rd vehicle in that station, which wouldn't meet that standard, but it can very much assist bringing that level of service. So.
All right, thank you very much.
So I was hoping, may I?
yes,
Yeah,
please.
so thank you, Fire Chief Robertson. No, so I was hoping if council was interested, I'd like to support what Prince Edward County is saying here, because I mean, I think fundamentally, sometimes rules are put in place, I don't want to say arbitrarily, but sort of one size fits all. And as we know, in rural Ontario, how we operate is slightly different. And, that one size fits all does, something slightly different, may make a lot more sense. And I think we need that flexibility. And certainly no one's suggesting that we compromise, the integrity of these machines, but sometimes an arbitrary number that's developed primarily for urban doesn't necessarily meet the same, it doesn't mean the same thing in a rural context, so.
Show of hands to bring back a support resolution or next. Okay, so if we could, excellent. We'll bring back a support resolution at our next council meeting.
Your Worship, if I may?
Please do.
Just a couple of words. I think sort of a timely moment, if I may just mention to you. I want to clarify roles a little bit here. Chief Doug starts the fires and Chief Dave puts them out. I think that's the way it's going to work. But I also do, if you don't mind, just want to touch on a couple of things. You've heard Ms. McDonald share some of the difficult decisions we're making on the infrastructure side. You've heard from Chief Robertson talking about some of the initiatives on a provincial scale looking at extending the life of fire apparatus. And when you're talking about fire trucks, and I think in the neighborhood, perhaps $700,000 for a new truck and climbing, as you know. You'll be hearing from staff very shortly. We'll be bringing some timelines for bringing the budget to you, draft budget. We're putting that budget through very, very strict, diligent scrutiny this year. And the reason I want to raise it for you is it is a difficult budget this year with a struggle with infrastructure costs. And I think some of the stuff you've heard, particularly on the infrastructure side tonight, is a little bit of foreshadowing for some of the very difficult decisions staff are looking at when we bring it to you. And just to carry on to that, I forwarded to council during the meeting this evening some, whether it's reassurance or not, or consolation or not, some of the difficult circumstances facing Ontario municipalities right now, and some of the numbers provided by the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario, which is a provincial office, looking at an average of a $52.1 billion infrastructure deficit province-wide is some of the forecasting they're looking at. So we are not alone. It's not a good thing to struggle with, but if it's any consolation, we're not alone. And I just want to let council know that we're digging into these things, and when you hear about these things, it comes with a great deal of diligence and care on behalf of staff, looking at some hard decisions for you.
The great infrastructure deficit. So thank you for that, for summarizing kind of the agenda through that fire trucks. I didn't know there were $750,000. That's gone up. We'll close the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Bougee, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that council accepts the items listed on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Carried. Confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougee. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-07, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read a first, second, third time passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 5th day of February 2024. All those in favor? Carried. adjournment moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 9:32 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for staff for preparing everything.